Welcome to the channel. Hit subscribe and dive into stories that'll stay with you long after the video ends. Let's begin. Rain hammered against the diner windows that night. A hard, cold rhythm on glass that drowned out even the hiss of the coffee machines. The smell of frying onions clung to the air. Plates clattered. Voices blurred into one low hum. Eli wiped down the counter for the third time, trying not to think about how empty his tips jar looked. He was 27, broke, and barely keeping the lights on in a one-room apartment that always smelled faintly of damp carpet. "Order up table 6. Yelled Marlene, the cook. Her voice rasped from years of smoke and steam. Eli nodded, grabbed the tray, and moved toward the booth. The couple barely looked up. He set the plates down, murmured a polite, "Enjoy your meal," and turned to go. And that's when it happened. Someone from the far end of the diner asked softly, "Hey, do you sing?" Eli froze mid-step. The voice belonged to a young girl, maybe 8 or 9, sitting with her mother near the window. Her face was small and round, eyes bright like she'd just asked about a secret. Her mother smiled apologetically. "Sorry, she heard you humming." "Said you sounded nice?" Eli's heart stuttered. He hadn't realized he'd been humming at all. "Oh, No, not really." The girl tilted her head. "You sound like the guy on my mom's radio." A chuckle rippled through a nearby booth. Marlene shouted from the kitchen, "Go on, hotshot! Give us a tune." He laughed, embarrassed, and shook his head. But something inside him stirred. Something that had been buried deep since the last time he'd stood on a stage. 3 years ago, before everything fell apart. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the way the rain softened the world outside. But Eli took a breath and sang, just a verse. Just a quiet, low melody he used to sing to his little sister back home. A song about finding your way when the light disappears. The diner went still. Forks stopped clinking. The hum of conversation faded until all that was left was his voice, raw and human, trembling but true. When he finished, there was a heartbeat of silence. Then applause. Real applause in this greasy spoon where no one clapped for anything. The little girl grinned. "Told you he sings, Mom." Eli laughed, bowing his head, cheeks burning. For a fleeting moment, it felt like something was right again. Then the bell over the door chimed. A man in a charcoal coat walked in, shaking rain from his shoulders. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Eli, still standing near the counter, still smiling from the applause. The stranger smiled faintly. "That was you singing, wasn't it?" Eli nodded, unsure. "Just for fun." The man stepped closer, his shoes squeaking on the wet floor. "It didn't sound like fun. It sounded like truth." Eli blinked. "Do I know you?" The man's smile deepened. "Not yet. But maybe you will." Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, the diner suddenly felt much smaller. Eli stood behind the counter, heart still pounding from the song and the stranger's stare. The man took a seat at the far end of the diner, coat draped neatly over the chair, rainwater glistening on the floor beneath him. He looked out of place, too polished for the cracked leather booths and flickering neon. Marlene peeked out from the kitchen, smirking. "Looks like you got yourself a fan, Songbird." "Yeah," Eli muttered, grabbing a menu. "Or a food critic." When he approached, the man didn't even glance at the menu. "Coffee, black, and maybe another song if that's on the menu." Eli forced a chuckle. "Sorry, we don't serve encores." "Shame." The man's tone was calm, measured, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, like someone who'd seen something rare and didn't want to lose sight of it. As Eli poured the coffee, the man asked, "You sing often?" "Not anymore. Why not?" Eli hesitated, watching the dark liquid swirl into the cup. "Doesn't pay rent." That made the man smile, but not cruelly. "Sometimes the things that don't pay rent pay for something else." Eli set down the cup, meeting his gaze. "And what's that?" "Purpose." The word landed heavy. Eli didn't respond. He just turned away, pretending to wipe the counter again. The man watched him for a while before reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a sleek black card, set it beside the sugar jar. "If you ever feel like singing somewhere that isn't between shifts," he said, "come here." Eli glanced down. No company name, no number, just a silver-embossed name, Marcus Vale. And beneath it, 2 words, Aurora Records. The name hit him like a forgotten chord. Aurora. He'd seen it once, years ago, printed on the back of an album that had gotten him through some of his darkest nights. He looked up, startled, but Marcus was already standing, coat over his arm. "Wait," Eli said. "You're that Marcus Vale, the producer?" Marcus tilted his head, amused. "Once upon a time. Now I just listen." He turned toward the door, rain still thrumming against the windows. "Call me if you want to be heard." The bell chimed again. He was gone. Eli stood frozen, staring at the card like it might vanish if he blinked. Marlene wandered out, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's that? Another bill?" He shook his head. "A chance, maybe." She raised an eyebrow. "Those don't come with cream and sugar, kid. Better not let it get cold." The rain eased outside. The girl and her mother had already left, but their booth still had a napkin with childish handwriting scrawled across it. "You should sing again." Eli tucked it into his apron pocket next to the card. Later that night, when the diner closed and the world fell quiet, he sat in the empty booth by the window. The neon light washed his face pink and blue as he stared out at the wet streets. The card glimmered faintly under the sign's flicker. He turned it over again and again, feeling its weight like a pulse in his hand. Finally, he whispered to himself, "What if he's right?" But outside, in the reflection of the window, a shadow moved, someone watching from across the street. And before Eli could turn to look, the shadow slipped away into the rain. Morning came late. Eli barely slept. The sound of rain still in his head like a rhythm that refused to fade. He'd stared at Marcus Vale's card until dawn, wondering if it was real, or just some weird dream conjured by exhaustion and false hope. By noon, the sky cleared. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and bleach. Marlene was counting the register when Eli walked in, freshly shaved, wearing the only clean shirt he owned. She gave him a once-over. "Big plans, Songbird?" He hesitated. "Maybe. Then go do it," she said, not looking up. "I can handle the eggs." He smiled, slipped the card into his pocket, and stepped outside. Aurora Records sat on a quiet corner downtown, a narrow brick building with tall windows that reflected the clouds like still water. Inside, the air hummed faintly with music, snippets of piano, distant laughter, a snare beat echoing from somewhere unseen. Eli almost turned around twice before pushing the door open. A receptionist looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" Marcus Vale told me to come by." Her expression shifted instantly. "You're the waiter," he blinked. "The what?" She smiled. He called ahead. Said, "The waiter with the voice. He's in Studio 3. Studio 3 was a small room lined with soundproof glass. Marcus stood near the mixing board, sleeves rolled up, eyes fixed on a tangle of cables. When he saw Eli, a faint grin touched his lips. "You came. I wasn't sure if I should." "That's usually a good sign," Marcus said, motioning him in. "Means you're not just chasing noise." Eli's heart thudded as he stepped closer. The room smelled of dust and electricity, and in the center stood a microphone, sleek, silver, waiting. Marcus gestured toward it. "Sing something," Eli froze. "Just like that?" "Just like that," he swallowed hard. "What should I sing?" "Whatever makes you forget where you are." The words hit something deep inside him. He took a slow breath, closed his eyes, and began to sing the same melody from the diner. But this time it carried more weight. Every note held the ache of years spent hiding from himself. When he finished, the silence in the room felt alive. Marcus didn't move. He just watched Eli, studying his face like he was reading the space between breaths. Finally, Marcus said softly, "Do you know what you just did?" Eli frowned. "Sang?" "You told the truth." A shiver ran through him. Marcus turned back to the console, adjusting a few dials. "I can work with that. But if you want to go further, it won't be easy. This business eats sincerity for breakfast. I'm not here for fame," Eli said quietly. "I just want to feel like I matter again." Marcus looked up. For a moment, something like pain crossed his face. "That's what I thought once." Before Eli could ask what he meant, a door slammed somewhere down the hall. Voices rose, angry, sharp. Marcus glanced toward the noise, jaw tightening. "Stay here," he said. "Don't touch anything." Then he was gone. Eli stood in the stillness of the studio, the hum of machines whispering in the air. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, half lit, half shadow, and in that moment he realized he wasn't the only one chasing redemption in this place. Eli waited, unsure what to do with his hands, his heart still thudding from the song that hung in the air. The studio's red recording light blinked softly, like a heartbeat. Outside the soundproof glass, muffled voices grew sharper. Then silence. Marcus reappeared, face drawn tight. He closed the door quietly behind him. "Everything okay?" I asked. Marcus forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just business. It's never as quiet as the music makes it seem." He walked to the console, pressed a button, and Eli's own voice filled the room. The playback sounded haunting, more fragile than Eli remembered. Every breath was audible. Every crack in his tone felt like a confession. Marcus nodded slowly. "You meant it." "Most don't." Eli stood frozen, unsure if that was praise or pity. "What happens now?" Marcus leaned on the console. "You come back tomorrow. I'll have a session lined up. There's a song I want you to try, one that's been waiting for the right voice." "Waiting?" Eli frowned. Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he handed over a sheet of paper from his folder. Lyrics scrawled in faded ink. The handwriting was uneven, almost shaking. Eli scanned the first line and stopped breathing. He knew these words. It was the same lullaby he'd sung to his sister, the same melody he'd whispered into the night when the world felt too heavy to stand. "Where did you get this?" His voice cracked. Marcus looked at him quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Your sister wrote it." Eli's world tilted. "That's not possible. She died before—" "I know," Marcus said gently. "She sent it to the studio before she passed. Said she wanted someone to keep her words alive." Eli's knees nearly gave out. He sat down hard on the stool, the paper trembling in his hands. "You knew her?" Marcus nodded once. "Briefly. She came here looking for a chance too. But life—" He stopped, exhaled. Life didn't wait for her. The air between them thickened. Eli felt the old guilt rising again. The night of the car accident. The unanswered call he never returned. "She believed in your voice," Marcus said quietly. "Said you had something real. When I heard you at the diner, I almost didn't believe it was you." Eli looked up, tears gathering at the edges of his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me right away?" Marcus hesitated, his gaze flickering. "Because I didn't want you to run. People run from pain, and I needed you to sing before you knew." Eli pressed his palms over his face, breath shaky. "I can't sing that, Marcus." "Not that one." Marcus's voice softened. "Then don't sing it for her. Sing it with her." Something broke open in Eli's chest, a quiet, aching truth that no amount of time could dull. He looked at the lyrics again. The ink had smudged slightly, like fingerprints still clung to it. And in that fragile space between grief and hope, a strange calm settled. He whispered almost to himself, "Maybe this is what purpose sounds like." Marcus didn't answer. He only looked at the paper too, his eyes unreadable. Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant but drawing closer, and somewhere deep in the building, a phone began to ring. Marcus didn't move. Eli glanced at him uneasy. "Aren't you going to get that?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Not that one." The phone kept ringing, long, relentless, until finally, it stopped, leaving behind a silence heavier than before. The next evening came like a held breath. The city glimmered under a thin fog, streetlights glowing gold against the haze. Eli stood outside Aurora Records, clutching the lyric sheet so tightly it creased in his hand. He'd been here 24 hours ago as a waiter who happened to sing. Now, he was about to step inside and let the past echo through a microphone. Inside, Studio 3 was dimly lit, the air warm and electric. Marcus was already there, standing by the glass with his arms folded, looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "You ready?" he asked quietly. Eli nodded. "As I'll ever be." Marcus motioned toward the mic. "Then let's make her proud." Eli took his place. The headphones slid over his ears, muting the outside world. The music swelled softly, a simple piano line, haunting and clean. He closed his eyes and began to sing. The first verse trembled. The second rose steady. By the chorus, something in him opened completely. He wasn't performing anymore. He was remembering the nights he'd heard his sister hum through the walls, her laughter spilling down the hallway, her voice urging him not to give up when everything else fell apart. Tears streamed down his face, but he didn't stop. He poured every fragment of guilt and love into the song until it didn't hurt anymore, until it felt like release. When the last note faded, silence followed. Not the hollow kind, but a stillness so full it hummed in his chest. He opened his eyes. Marcus stood behind the glass, not moving. There were tears in his eyes, too. Then the intercom crackled. "That was perfect." Eli laughed weakly, wiping his face. "She wrote that for both of us, didn't she?" Marcus looked down. "For you, yes. For me, maybe as forgiveness." Eli frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus hesitated, then said, "Your sister didn't just walk into this studio once. I turned her away the first time. I told her she wasn't ready. A week later, she was gone. I've been trying to make that right ever since." Eli's breath caught. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The confession hung heavy in the air. "Fragile as smoke," finally Eli said softly. "Then let's both make it right." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. They mixed the track together deep into the night, layer by layer, word by word. When the final version played back, it didn't sound like either of them alone. It sounded like something whole. Marcus leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. "The world's going to feel this." Eli smiled faintly. "I don't care if the world hears it. I just want her to." Outside, the rain began again, soft this time. Through the studio window, the city lights blurred like watercolor. Marcus set down his headphones and turned to Eli. "There's a showcase tomorrow. Industry people, press, the works. If you're ready, it's yours." Eli looked down at his hands, steady now. "Yeah," he said. "I think I finally am." The next night, the small venue pulsed with quiet energy. A single spotlight bathed the stage. Eli stepped forward, the crowd a blur of faces. He took the mic, eyes closing for a breath. "This song," he said softly, "is for the one who believed before I did." And as he sang, his sister's words filled the room, somewhere near the back. Marcus stood in the shadows, head bowed. By the final note, the crowd was silent, stilled not by awe, but by the feeling that something true had just been set free. Eli smiled through tears, because in that moment, for the first time in years, he wasn't just a waiter who sang at work. He was someone who had been heard, and somewhere beyond the lights. The quiet that followed, it felt like she was listening too. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.